To the Fireside Chats. We have Fire, and I'm Bill English, Artistic Director of San Francisco Playhouse. So, welcome to the Empathy Gym Fireside Chats. Tonight is like incredibly exciting for me because my favorite playwright is with us tonight, and was just telling him that we sort of, as we began in our like second year of existence, we did one of his plays, Our Lady of 121st Street, and it was our first breakout hit. It was our first, extended production, the first rave reviews, and it sort of put us on the map in San Francisco and set the tone, I think, for a lot of what San Francisco Playhouse has become. It like we took a chance on an edgier play by a playwright that had not been produced in San Francisco at that time and was not well known in San Francisco. And it was such a smash success that it just really kind of kicked us off as a company. Then the next year we did Jesus Hop the A Train to follow up. And that was a show that I had seen in London and went, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I think it was the Lab company that did it.
Labyrinth.
It was the Labyrinth company that did it in London. And then, so we did that. And then we were lucky enough, I don't know how we did it, but we talked Carl Lumley into playing the leading role in it. And then we had to go out and find somebody we thought could stay on the stage with him, and a local person. And we wanted somebody of color, and we knew we had a couple. We didn't really have anybody, we just had young green actors we ended up we had picked two guys, and we ended up having to take a chance on one of them. And the guy we took a chance on was Adly Guirgis, who had just come out of Brown and was just kind of knocking around San Francisco, figuring out like what to do next. And that show also was a tremendous hit. A couple years later, we did Den of Thieves, which is a really early Stephen play. And then we moved to New Theater. We did Motherfucker with a Hat. So we've done a bunch of shows by this playwright who I just adore. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Stephen Adly Guirgis.
Hey, Bill.
Hey.
How's San Francisco?
It's pretty good. I was in the city today, and things seem fairly lively. The downtown, a lot of the big stores are all still boarded up, but there's a lot of people around, and there was a little traffic going home. So it seems like there's life. I'm kind of curious, what's the Upper West Side like? Is it still ghost town, or?
It's still kind of ghost town. A few weeks ago, but before I say that, I got to say thank you for having me, number one. Number two, San Francisco is going to have a new citizen hopefully in the fall. My cousin, my dear sweet cousin Julia Riyadh got accepted into University of San Francisco. So
wow.
She's going to be there, and hopefully your theater will be open sooner rather than later, and she can come down there. But she's coming. She's seen the plays down there. And also, if you don't mind me mentioning that, you mentioned Our Lady of 121st Street, and actually this Saturday, Lab is doing a special reading of that play.
Wow.
With most of the original cast.
Wow.
The ones who couldn't be there, we got Lawrence Fishburne to read Rooftop.
Fantastic.
And, Bobby Cannavale, who's a company member, to read Vic, and John Doman to read Father Lux. And that's, I guess, if you go on the Labyrinth Theater Company website, it's free. It's sometimes Saturday night, and it's on the Labyrinth website.
Wow.
So, having said that, the Upper West Side.
Well, that's great. I got to check it out. That was a big moment in my life, that production.
Yeah, it was a big
directed it, and I designed the set for it, and I had this great cast. We did a play a couple of years ago called The Entomologist's Love Story by Melissa Ross.
Oh wow!
And when she and I were talking, and when I go to New York, I usually see her, and actually we've commissioned her to write a new play for us, and I suppose she's working on it, you know. But she told me she was in
It was in
Our
the
Lady
original
of
cast, yeah. She
121st Street.
and she unfortunately can't do the reading on Saturday either. Yeah, oh, that's great. She's a great writer and
I love her
great
writing.
friend. I've known her for a long time now. When she was
When
an
you
intern.
when you hear her talk about the original production of that show, she just lights up. It's like that was a huge moment in her life, you know, being in that. I think she told me she kind of just wandered by and started helping out and taking tickets and doing all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff around the place and probably working out as an actor with everybody else, you know.
Yeah, she was like an intern. She's working in the office, and then she presented something that she was writing about that was about eating disorders, and it was like really rare when you have as you know, a piece of theater that's about like a subject matter, but yet it's fully its own thing. You know, you don't feel like you're watching like a after school special or something. And I just thought she was really talented. Yeah, and then she ended up being in the play
Yeah.
and
So
being
so
one of Lab's playwrights. You know, we've done several of her plays.
so early now, some people don't really know too much about the Labyrinth, but you were a company member along with John Ortiz and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Who were some of the other original? A lot of people have gone on to have great careers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I came in the second year, but Sam Rockwell was the original member. Actually from the Bay Area originally.
I
His
didn't
dad,
know.
I think, still lives out there. Sam, Phil joined us around the third year. John Ortiz, David Zayas, Daphne Rubin Vega, who was in Mimi and Rent and has been working ever since. A lot of
David,
people.
David Zayas has had a good, strong television career, right?
David Zayas have a great career. David Zayas works like 357 days a year. He doesn't stop. And he'll do whatever. He'll do plays, he'll do movies, he'll do TV. He does whatever's there. And yeah, one of my closest friends. And when he joined the company, he wasn't an actor, he was a cop. You know, he just always been interested in, like, he loved movies and he loved theater. You know, he went straight from high school to the Air Force and then straight from the Air Force to the police academy. And he saw our little ad in the paper looking for Latino actors and came in and joined. And yeah, and I was, like I said, there the second year.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Guillermo Diaz, Bobby Cannavale, who came a little bit later, but yeah, it's been a great mix of people, and many of us have been fortunate enough to like carve out a living. But it's always been when you go into the building, you know, your resume isn't, you know, what's important, you
Yeah.
know, and that's, I think, part of the reason why we're still kicking, you
Still
know.
going, still going, still producing plays. You know, now Halfway Bitches was a Labyrinth production, right?
Yeah, it was a co-production with the Atlantic
Uh-huh.
because we had no money. You know,
Yeah.
we're going through some stuff now, and Neil Pepe, who's amazing, and he
Yeah.
produced Between Riverside and Crazy, and he said, "Come on, we'll do a co-production." And I said, "Well, there's 18 actors," and he said, "No problem." I was like, "And a goat." He said, "All right," you know, and we did it, and it was a real labor of love, and we did it with, I think, 15 out of the 18 were company members, yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
it was a real labor of love.
So how did you kind of walked in there, well, as an actor primarily, right?
Yeah, I went to college with John Ortiz, who's artistic director, and Liza Colon Zayas, who's David's wife, and a formidable actress in her own right. And I have been in New Mexico I lived in New Mexico for a year, and I came back, and John was like, "I started this company. You have to be a part of it." I was like, all right. He's like, but you have to audition. I was like, all right. He's like, but it's all Latino company. So in order for you to get in, you have to be like really, really good. Like, all right. And they put me through like 6 auditions, like 6 callbacks, like,
Oh
and then apparently I didn't get in. It was the committee voted like I think 3-2 against me. And then John was like, look, trust me, we have to take this guy. He's going to pay dividends somehow. And thank God, it changed the course of my life.
Well, he really believed in you.
He really believed in me. John is, I think, 4 years or maybe even 5 years younger than me. And we would have never met at school if I hadn't been such a bad student. I was an undergrad for 7 years. So I think he came in as a freshman when I was like a super senior. And we had a couple of years together. And he actually got out ahead of me because he dropped out of college to act. And he hasn't stopped,
Right. Works all the time.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's how I got in. And it didn't just, obviously I wasn't a writer then and I became a writer, but also just even as an actor, I grew so much and everyone was so talented. And I noticed that everybody who was really, really good had all studied with either some guy named Bill or someone named Maggie. So I was like, I got to find this Bill or Maggie because I'm not going to survive. And, I studied with Bill Esper and Maggie Flanagan. And it was the first time in my life where I was in a academic or, in a school setting where I was 1,000% motivated to be good and learn and it was amazing experience. And the only thing I did in school other than, work to pay the rent was a 1 night a week at Lab, and we would have our meetings because we weren't a producing company at first. We were just an actor's gym. And it was 7 to 10 at night. And we'd usually go to like 11 and then we go to the bars. And then a lot of times we'd go sneak back into the theater and just keep doing stuff at 3 in the morning, But we really bonded, and that was the basis by which we decided to start producing theater, and also how so much of us got started. I would have never been a playwright, probably.
How did you start? Because you wrote. I mean, was Our Lady the first production? No, there were productions before that, right?
Yes, there was the first production at Lab was a play called Rough House by Lillian Siglaki. And then we did a night of 1 acts. And John asked me to write a 1 act. And the reason he asked me to write a 1 act was we had took a playwriting class together in college. And also I wrote him one time he asked me to write a paper for him for English class. And so I wrote him a paper in exchange for a pair of sneakers. And so I think he remembered that and thought maybe I could write. So I wrote a 1 act and it seemed to go over really well. And then everybody just kind of literally forced me to keep writing. Yeah. They were like, okay, what are you writing next? What are you writing next? And I had a real, I think, unique experience as a playwright that basically everything I ever wrote was produced, because of the company. And they just believed in me. And I was, and I was also writing, I'd say 50% of the characters were just created. Then other times I'd be writing with someone in mind, like David Zayas was one of the first ones, and he wasn't one of the more experienced actors, but there was just something about him that I really liked. And also he was really funny. And at the time I was writing more comedy. And so we sort of bonded. And then as we grew, as we all grew, when Phil Seymour Hoffman started directing my plays, and I think he did 6 of them. I felt that working with Phil gave me the freedom to like write more personally. Yeah, be a little less concerned about making the audience laugh every 30 seconds or a minute, and so I was challenged myself, and then I started writing more challenging roles. Challenging David here. This one's just not funny. It's also this. It's also that. And so we all, I think, Phil, myself, the actors, it was all a process, I think, of challenging each other, holding each other to a really high bar, and just believing in each other and caring so much about the process, the
Yeah.
work. You know, it was, we didn't really have any aspirations, you know, but it just came out of the work. And then eventually, I wrote this play, In Arabia We'd All Be Kings. And that was the first play that we started to get some notice. And after that was Jesus Hopped the A Train. And that's sort of the play that put us on the map. And then Our Lady was, you know, Jesus was kind of a big success. You know, we did it in our little theater, then we did it off Broadway, then we did it in Edinburgh, we did it in London, and then we did it in the West End of London. So Our Lady was like, okay, what do you got next?
Yeah.
You know? And that was, yeah, and that was, you know, I had a lot of, what's it called when you can't write? Writer's block. Yeah. We were in tech, and there was no act two.
Oh, wow.
You know, in tech. And I remember John and Phil taking me aside and saying, you know, if we don't have a second act, like in about 24 hours, we're going to have to cancel the show, you know? And Phil was crying, I remember. And he was like, but if you can't do it, it's okay, man. It's all right. You know, like, you know, and I felt so many feelings. I was ashamed, but also like, I just didn't want to let them down, you know? And so I busted out the second act and we worked on it in previews. I remember the last scene of the play, you know, between the two guys, you know, the night before the New York Times was coming. I could never get that scene right. I probably still haven't got it right. But the night before the Times was coming, I wanted to do a rewrite on it. And I remember asking the actors, I said to Phil, if I rewrite the scene, can you rehearse it at 6 and put it in at 8? And he said, all right. And then I talked to the two actors, as Felix Solis and Richard Petroselli. If I give you this scene at the end of the night, can you bring it in tomorrow and we can put it in? Yes. And we did. And then that was the night that the Times came. And so
Well,
we
that's
got lucky.
That's kind of fearless, you know, just
You know,
pursuing the
it's
art.
fearless, but also when you're just starting out, you know, one thing Phil used to say about me early on was the good thing about Steven is that he doesn't know what the mistakes are. So
Right.
he just writes, you know, and I think back then it was just like, you know, why not? You know,
Yeah.
if Phil was willing to put it up and they're willing to like learn it,
Like,
you know,
sure, like, what have I got to lose, you know? I just
there's
got to do
nothing.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always been about trying to make things as better, you know?
I love what you were saying about comedy, starting kind of with comedy and then writing deepening the characters and giving them real problems and issues. That's what I've always felt about your work is you skate that line between comedy and tragedy so deftly where, you know, you're laughing 1 minute and then, oh my God, the next. And that's, how does that, that's just, you just do that, right? That you probably can't explain to me how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how it works. I think maybe naturally I have a sense of humor or whatever, but also, you know, if you're writing edgy material and you're writing edgy characters, and sometimes, you know, edgy can be a kind way of putting it, you know. You know, if a character is you know, is like a bad dude or a bad girl, you know, but they're funny, you know, it's something that keeps you listening, you know. And
Absolutely.
also, who was it? Someone who said, he said, you make them laugh, and then when their mouths are open, you can feed them a little something, the audience something, you know? So,
Oh, totally. Well,
and I've also been a firm believer that you do not have a right to bore your audience. You know, I mean, you know, and so, you know, humor helps, and it's also part of life, and life is absurd, as you know, as we're living today.
right.
In this way, it's, you know, we have a friend. You know, we're all doing Zoom calls and FaceTime group calls and all this stuff, trying to stay connected. And we have this one friend who gets really upset when we make jokes. You know, we're on a text chain. You know, it's like we're on a text chain, and like I make a joke, and the next thing I see, it's like, you know, Brett C has left the group. You know, and it's like, yes, of course it's serious, and you know, we have everybody. I think has good days and bad days, and the bad days during this time can be really bad. But you also have to laugh, and also we don't get this time back. You know, it's like this is the day that we have, and you try to make the best that you can of it, and you know, and you know, it's all right to laugh a little bit, and it's all right to cry as well.
Yeah, it's all right to be.
Right.
I think I'd done Jesus, and no, I'd done Our Lady. We did Our Lady first. That's why I'm confused about the order, because we did it the other way around. But I know when I was in Jesus and talking to the actors, I started to realize that there's a way in which only way word I can think of is ennoble. Like you give your characters poetry. Like I said, you guys have been given poetry to speak your truth from the core of your being, you know, and everyone in this play is a poet. And I feel that way I feel very much that you've never let me down on that prediction. And it's a way you stand up for your characters, right? And that's part of the comedy, is part of that, because even if the guy is an asshole, you know, and you would normally hate him, he's got a wit that kind of gives him a little something that makes you care about him,
or a point of view that's, you know, you can sort of agree with, you know, even though it's messed up. But I you know, I don't know that I ennoble characters. I just think that I think people, human beings,
yeah,
nobility, and human beings are poets, and there's all different kinds of poetry. You know, there's formal poetry, and there's, you know, I forgot. Are you Irish? Is your background? You know,
English.
Oh, wow, fuck you. No, but like,
there's some Irish in there too, but I got some Irish. Yeah.
If you go into the pubs in England and there's a poetry there to that language, you know, and it's beautiful. And there's and that's everywhere, you know, on every corner of every street, in every building, on every neighborhood, there's that guy, you know, who has a way with the words. And it's irregardless of, you know, if you went to Harvard or if you graduated high school, you know, the gift of gab or the turn of a phrase or whatever. And that language has always been like music to me, you know?
It is.
So,
it is.
yeah.
And I think that's the way you put it is better, is all humans have nobility, and all humans have poetry in their spirit. And there are people everywhere who are able to turn phrases and use words. But I think your plays just remind us of that, you know, remind us of the basic essential nobility of mankind, you know. And that's another thing that's great about them.
All humans, except there's one human I can think of.
And we're not going to mention his name, are we?
We won't mention him, but I think he lacks nobility.
Him by exclusion.
He lacks poetry. He lacks nobility. Yeah. That's why I could never write about him. Yeah. Because I can't find, intellectually, I can find the empathy, but the rest is like, no, you go to Elba, you know, go to prison, go to jail. Like, that's where you belong.
Go to Elba.
Go to Elba.
Get thee to a fucking Elba.
That's right.
So here we are. It's like, my God, this time we're in, you know. Was Halfway Bitches going to get another production? Was it scheduled to, because it was such a hit?
It was, I mean, no, not that I know of. You know, I mean, there was talk of you know. But you know, New York is so, everything is booked. All the theaters are booked. All the
Yeah.
spaces are booked. I don't know. Maybe something might happen with it in the future. Um, you know, maybe if your theater, when it reopens, if you want to go on a suicide mission and do a play with 18 characters in a coat, uh,
Well, you know, I had actually, before all this mess went down, I had got Jez Butterworth to let me do the ferryman.
oh,
So
nice.
I am crazy enough to do an 18 character play. And the ferryman, it was in the small print in the contract. His agent calls me back and says, okay, Bill, you can do the ferryman, but you got to have the goose and you got to have the rabbit and you got to have the infant. So it's in the contract. So I guess maybe I'll do that one first. And if I get the goose and the rabbit and the infant,
You got to
then
have an actual infant.
yeah, you got to have a baby. Uh, but one of our stage managers just had a baby. So I figured I at least had one baby,
The
you know.
baby. That's a tough one. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as this play was being written, I realized like, okay, no one is ever going to do this play again because it's too big, and, you know, and there's a
Well,
go. But then I was like, well, there'll be some theater, you know, some little small theater, and they'll you know, someone will use their dog and they'll put some horn, you know, or whatever. Um, Actually, I was thinking for publishing of including a section to show a way that you can do it, possibly without an actual goat, you know,
not a goat.
just
You
so
could
that
substitute a raccoon or something. But so anyway, the ferryman is like dead in the water, right? And we'll do it in a couple of years or something. But
he's a great
if I can
guy.
do a goose, I can do a goat, you know.
He's
So
a
tell
great
me
guy.
what I always, I always talk a lot about how I think playwrights, because I worship, obviously I worship playwrights. I think playwrights are like the prophets of our time, that you guys have more sensitive antenna than the rest of us, and you pull down information out of the tumult of information and turn it into a story that we can use to see ourselves better, you know. And I think if there's prophecy now, what do you smell? What are we gonna what's gonna come out of this? You have any thoughts about the future of human race and art?
You know, you're talking to the wrong guy. I might seem smart when the play is written, but I'm like kind of like a big dummy. Um, you know, like Tony Kushner could answer that question. There's a lot of people that could. I don't know that I can. Well, but one thing I can say is, you know, theater has been flirting with the idea of using film and multimedia. You know, there's always been a thing of broadcasting, you know, plays and stuff. And I think that's probably going to happen. That there's probably going to be, like, you know, with the Zoom thing, there's going to be some type of hybrid
Right.
of media and live performance. And I think it's probably going to be, you know, some ingenious cats that are like 30 years younger than me that are going to figure that out. Um, and, you know, what's going to happen with theater and what's going to happen with the world, you know, I don't know. But you know what I do know is when when we finally destroy ourselves and blow ourselves up and we're back in the caves, you know, there's going to be some guy like you or me who's going to be like, okay, it's showtime. And everyone's gonna be like, showtime, what are you talking about? We're in a cave. We're, you know, we have one chicken wing between 12 of us. You know, it's like storytelling isn't going to stop. Theaters is not going to stop. And, you know, if anything, I think that, you know, I don't know when we'll get back to it, but it's as important, more important than ever. And I don't know why it's important. I don't feel that I myself am important, but the communal experience is irreplaceable. You know, it's like I can watch, everyone's watching stuff on, you know, TV and Netflix now during this thing. And I started watching this cop show, this British cop show. I think it's called Line of Duty. And it was like me and a few of my friends were like hooked, fascinated, blah, blah, blah. Just love it. Best thing ever. I couldn't tell you a storyline now. It's gone, you know. But you know, when you go into a theater and you see something that really has an effect on you, you never forget it.
Right.
You know,
Never.
I will never forget seeing John Malkovich in Burn This, Mark Ruffalo in Kenny Lonergan's play, any show that Phil was ever in, you know, and many other things. You know, seeing Godspell, you know, when I was 12, and Sister Mary Ignatius explained, you know, like those experiences. You know how it is when you see a show and the show's over and everyone's like, let's go out for drinks, and you kind of just want to be alone for like 20 minutes. You know, you want to walk around the block a few times and then maybe go have the drink. That's something that's only theater, you know? So I'm going to be rooting for San Francisco Playhouse.
Yeah.
And when the GoFundMe thing comes, I'm going to go fund. It's so cool that David, I didn't realize that he did it with you, because I met him when I saw Hamilton, and he was all, you know, excited, told me how much doing that play had meant to him. And it's so cool that that it was with you, man.
It was good. We had a good time. And Carl was incredible, you know, and he's just an incredible human being, you know, and a wonderful. He had a big effect on David for sure, you know, because he's the old pro and doing push-ups while he recites the books of the Bible, and you know, just a crazy motherfucker, you know, totally great. Hey, I want to ask you before we're going to let you go, but
Yes.
I want to ask you two things, and these are a little selfish because you told me about a play you wrote that took place on an Egyptian cruise liner.
Yes.
And I keep wanting, every time I see you, I say, is that play still in a closet somewhere? Because I think you liked it.
It is in the closet. It was called Boom, 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 Boom. And it took place on an Egyptian cruise ship. And it was, I think, 6 Egyptian brothers that ran the ship. And it was all played by the same actor, Yul Vasquez. Yeah, you know, not only is in the closet, but I know roughly where in the closet. And one of these days, I have a feeling if we took it out and found it, it might be kind of stupid, but maybe it would make a good musical. Like maybe into a musical.
And he could sing in a different voice in every character. He'd be like a different alto and a soprano and a tenor.
But it was a lot of fun, and some people still remember it really, really.
The other idea you had for a play that you told me about that I'm still fascinated by, and I think it got shelved, and maybe you'll never do it, but I thought of it because of David, because you had an idea to do a play about Jimi Hendrix.
Does he play guitar, David?
Yeah, he's a musician. He does. He's got the stature, you know. He's tall, and he got that hair when he wants to have that hair, you know. And he had it back in Jesus's day, but I think that still might be a pretty good idea because he was like kidnapped, right? Or there's a story about.
Yes, there's a story that he was kidnapped. Basically the story that I had heard was that, you know, his whole career was basically 3.5 years. You know, that we know, you know, that the public knew of him. And those 3.5 years, he was working nonstop. He was doing shows every night, recording every day. And, you know, Chaz Chandler was his manager, but the other manager was this mobster guy, this British gangster. I forgot what his name was. But at one point towards the end, Jimmy couldn't take it anymore and he ran away. And he left Europe, wherever he was, and flew back to New York and went down to the Village and was hiding out and hanging out with his old friends. And he got kidnapped on the street. And the manager ended up rescuing him, paying the ransom. And Jimmy was so grateful to be rescued that he got back on the plane to go on tour, and I think he was dead 6 months later.
Yeah.
But the thing of it was that the manager had him kidnapped.
Yeah.
And then, faked the payment. And then Jimmy was so grateful, but, the manager himself had. So I had an idea to write that play. And then I was talking with the Public Theater because they actually have a commission to do a Jimi Hendrix thing with the approval of the estate.
The Hendrix estate, yeah.
Yeah, and but I didn't end up doing it. I ended up not doing with them. I don't know if they're doing something, but
Yeah.
I would like to. I think I would like to do something like that. But as a play, a play with music, as opposed to like a musical. Like,
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it with David. He would love to do it. I told him about it. But I remember you told me one time that you had that idea, and it stuck with me. That and the Egyptian cruise liner are the little things that stick with you that I remember. I want everybody at home to know that Stephen is allowing people to photograph that wallpaper and use it in their kitchens if they like. It's like magnificent wallpaper. Hey, thank you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bill.
That was so fun.
Yeah, man. And I hope I see you soon. And I get to put my arms around you and give you a big hug, you and your whole family. Thank you for being such a champion of my work. It's really meant a lot.
You got to come out and visit your nephew or niece or
my niece, Julia.
Will you come out when people can come places and everything? And she's probably going to be going to school online in the fall, so.
Yeah, I'm supposed to.
We'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places or some.
I hope so, man.
Funny song like that. At any rate, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you all. That was spectacular. Thank you all for coming to listen to Stephen and I chat and hear about all the stuff he's thinking and doing, and really excited to have you here, and I'd love also to have you come back next week. And I think it'll be fun. We have Jonathan Spector, who's a local playwright, who they did a play at the Aurora Theater called Eureka Day, and then it got moved to New York and was a huge hit. The New York Times wrote this love poem about Eureka Day, and he's going to be with us next week. And then the following week, we're going to have Rogelio Martinez, who, as a lot of you may remember, from Born in East Berlin that we did last January in our Sandbox series. Thank you all for being here. Thank all of you who have helped us with our attempt to build a bridge from this chaos into a coherent future. We hope you will continue to support the SF Playhouse in the future. And also join our YouTube channel, because that's good for us. We get more followers, we get more widespread, more people hear about our Zoom meetings and our new media. At any rate, thank you all. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next week.